Hello, my name is Abigail and welcome back to Polyglot Progress. I have been using italki to learn, improve, maintain, and even teach languages for over 7 years now. I've been a student, I've been a teacher, and if you've ever watched any of my other videos, chances are you've heard me mention it at least once. But while I have made videos on speaking and I have made videos talking about other specific resources, I've never really gone in depth on how I use italki, and I've been asked about it a lot and I mention it so much that I felt like it was time to do that. So that's what we're gonna do today, but before we get into how I use the website for my learning, I do just want to point out that this video is sponsored by italki themselves, so I do have a code for you to use it for your language learning. If you're one of the first 50 people to use the code PROGRESS5, you'll get an extra $5 worth of italki credits when you spend your first $10, and then come right back here and I will tell you all of my secrets to how to have a really good lesson. Okay, so first things first, a lot of you might not need this, but just in case you are new here or you've tuned me out every single time I've ever talked about italki, what is italki? So italki is a platform where you can take private and group language lessons in more than 150 languages with tutors and certified native speaking teachers from all around the world. And the model for italki is pay per lesson as opposed to subscription based, and lessons start at just $5, which ends up making it, in my opinion, one of the most affordable options when it comes to getting speaking practice. And then there's also a community area with quizzes, podcasts, and other materials to help you learn your target languages. But spoiler, I'm pretty much only going to talk about the customized one-on-one language lessons today because this is a video about how I use italki, and private lessons are just by far how I use the platform most of the time. The site has changed a lot in the nearly 8 years that I have been on it, but from the beginning, I would say like 99% of my time on italki has been spent either taking or teaching private lessons. And honestly, before we get a lot further into this video, I do just want to say that italki is overall really easy to use. I just know that I personally was so nervous before my first lessons, and because I've been using italki for so long, I really feel like I have perfected my approach to finding tutors and taking lessons. So I just wanted this video to be there for anyone who is feeling nervous and wants a little bit of advice, or anyone who is just curious. I will willingly admit that I am very nosy and want to know how other people are learning languages and using the resources that I use, so who am I to stop the other nosy people out there from knowing exactly what I'm doing? So with all that out of the way, let's start at the beginning. How do you find the tutor that's right for you? italki splits the people helping you learn languages into two types: community tutors and professional teachers. I'm pretty much going to be using the terms teacher and tutor pretty interchangeably throughout this video, but the actual distinction is that professional teachers have some sort of teaching certification, while community tutors are native or advanced speakers of the language who don't necessarily have a certificate in teaching the language. Which is better? Well, that's sort of up to you. But honestly, I'll let you in on a secret. I don't really feel like there's that much of an inherent difference between lessons with community tutors and professional teachers. I think a lot of people expect, and how I used to think about it, was that professional teachers would give these really structured lessons with PowerPoints and textbooks and homework, while a lesson with a community tutor would be conversation-based and you'd just be having a chat and getting corrections based on your speaking. And that's not necessarily wrong, that is sometimes true, but I've also had conversation-based lessons with professional tutors, and I've also had really structured lessons based on a personalized curriculum for me with community tutors. We'll talk all about lesson structures later and why you might want either of those things and why I pick to do either of those things, but the point that I just want to make right now is that you don't necessarily need to rule out one type of teacher if you're looking for a specific lesson type. What you do need to focus on when picking a tutor is pretty much everything else. And I will say, I think I probably put a little bit more time and effort into picking a tutor than maybe some other people do, but I really love having tutors that I come back and see regularly over long stretches of time. I feel like they are really able to learn my learning style, they're really able to pick up on patterns and the mistakes that I'm making, and they also just have this ability then to see my growth even when I can't necessarily see it, and they can communicate that to me. All of which sound really small, but I think make a huge difference when it comes to my growth as a learner, and just my confidence and motivation, which are also really important. I've definitely had to take breaks, so it hasn't been every single week, but whenever I am taking Bulgarian lessons, I meet with the same tutor every single week, and I've been doing that for over 3 years now. I'm very much so in it for the long haul when it comes to tutors, which makes it a little bit more important and a bit more worth it for me to to really invest a lot of time into picking the right person. And even when I'm not looking for a new long-term tutor, because sometimes I do meet with new people, so I can practice listening to other dialects or just get a fresh set of eyes and ears on my abilities, I found that putting a little bit more time and effort into the tutor selection process ends up saving me a bit more time and just makes things a lot more enjoyable than if I just pick random people and go trial by error that way. And to figure out which tutors feel like they might be the right fit for me, I watch a ton of introduction videos and read a ton of teacher bios. Ultimately, I'm really looking for two things in my tutors and teachers. I want someone who has a personality that aligns with mine and that I feel like I will feel comfortable talking to, especially if it's a language that I'm nervous in or I am looking for a tutor that I want to meet with for a long time. And I, of course, also look for people that feel like they have a teaching style that aligns with whatever I'm looking for in that moment, whether it is someone who's going to help me feel more confident or someone who has experience proctoring a certain exam that I want to take and can really help me hone my skills specifically for that. When I am looking for that main tutor that I hope to spend the next several years of my life meeting with, I don't necessarily find them on the first go. Sometimes it takes a bit of meeting with people to find the right fit, and that is totally okay. I used to feel really bummed when I would take a lesson with someone and they wouldn't really feel like the right fit, but I definitely no longer feel that way. Every lesson is an opportunity for me to practice speaking and a way for me to improve my skills. And it just makes it an even better feeling when I do find the person that clicks with me and is a tutor that I want to keep meeting with. I think the more students that I taught as an English teacher and the more lessons I've taken as a learner, the more I've realized that there is so much diversity in the ways that people teach languages and learn languages, so it makes sense that you don't necessarily find the right fit every single time. But even when it's not the right fit, every lesson is an opportunity for you to practice your language skills. And even in the worst case scenarios, you probably learn a few new words and learn some styles that you don't necessarily respond to as well when it comes to language learning. Plus, it just makes it all the sweeter when then you do find a tutor that's the right fit. And once I've found the right tutor and booked our first call, it is time to prepare for the lesson. As soon as I book my first lesson with a tutor, I really like to send them a message with just a little bit of info about me, my language level, my goals for the language, and what I'm hoping to get out of our classes. If I'm not a total beginner in the language, I will write this in the target language. That way the tutor gets a sense of my writing abilities. And also, it's just another opportunity for me to get to practice. Every single tutor or teacher I have ever met with has gone over those types of things with me in the first lesson. This is just something that I started doing after I was a tutor on italki because I feel like it gives the teacher a better sense of who I am coming in and the kinds of things that they should be expecting. And it just makes me a little less nervous before my first lesson because I know that if I forget to mention something about my goals and my history with the language, I've already sent it, the tutor's already aware, and we're going to be able to shape a class that helps me achieve those things. If this is a language that I am still a very beginner in, maybe this is my first time ever speaking the target language, I will also make myself what I like to call a cheat sheet. This is basically just a sheet of phrases and words that I'm likely to need in the lesson. Things like, what does this word mean? I can't hear you. Could you repeat that? This is definitely not something that I do when I am at a higher level in the language. Even as like an upper beginner, I don't feel like I really need this. Just based on my language levels, I haven't even needed to do this in a few years now, but I mention it because I promise, as silly as it sounds, having this can make you feel so much more comfortable and make your first time speaking a language so much less scary because you know that you do have this as a safety net to fall back on if you do forget a word or if something comes up like your computer is frozen and you don't know how to say that. Another thing I like to do before any lesson, regardless of whether it's a new tutor, an old tutor, a new language, an advanced language, is warming myself up for the lesson by spending a little bit of time using the language beforehand. Now, depending on when I've scheduled the lesson for, I might not get a chance to do this. I have been known to sleep up until like 10 minutes before class, and I also previously would schedule lessons during my lunch break at work, so I didn't really have the time to do this. But if I do have time, depending on how much time I have, I might watch a YouTube video, write in my journal, or just talk to myself in the language for 10 to 15 minutes. And I really do this for two reasons. The first reason is that I found that doing this really helped calm my nerves and was really crucial to helping me build my confidence enough that now I don't get nervous before taking lessons. And the other, probably more obvious reason is that it just warms my brain up to use the language, and I feel like I have an easier time speaking and understanding the class once it does start. And then the last thing that I always do before lessons is make sure that I'm ready to be in a lesson. I always make sure I have water or tea, I always make sure my laptop is plugged in, and I always make sure that I have a pen and notebook, my homework, or whatever else I might need in the class. And this is another one that might seem a little silly. I'm not going into like a 4-hour class, I'm in class for an hour or less, but I think it is so important to make sure that I am in the right mindset to give all of my attention to the class and not how dry my throat is, and that nothing is going to interrupt the class at any point, like like my laptop dying. And once all of that is finally done, it's time for the lesson. So with that, let's talk lesson structures. This is definitely the thing that changes the most with my italki approach, just based on the language itself and my level in it and my goals for it. Sometimes I take casual conversation classes where we just chat about whatever comes up for 30 minutes. Sometimes I like really structured lessons where we're working through textbook exercises for an hour. And most of the time, it's a mix of both. I really like taking lessons where for about half an hour, we just talk about our lives, our weeks, whatever we feel like chatting about. And then we move into something a little more structured and specific, like working on textbook exercises or going over something that I wrote and correcting it. How I decide my ideal lesson structure really just depends on my current goals for the language. Like right now for French, I'm really looking to polish up my speaking skills because I let them get so rusty, and I'm hoping to take the DELF in the future. I knew that because of that, I really wanted to work on building my confidence when speaking. I really wanted to work on cleaning up the many errors I've been catching myself making. And I really wanted to enrich my vocabulary and just make my speech overall a lot more persuasive and professional sounding. So recently, I've been taking lessons with Philippe, who's been teaching me all about public speaking, but through French. Each week, I've been doing some homework, like writing a speech or an essay or something else related to public speaking. And then we spend our classes having a debate.
L'école soit l'endroit où on puisse réduire ces différences. C'est mon deuxième argument.
Et je comprends votre argument, oui, mais en même temps, ces inégalités va exister dehors l'école.
Or practicing speeches, or learning about what makes a good public speaker, or watching videos of people from around the Francophone world giving speeches and talking about what they're doing. These lessons have been so cool because not only am I getting to use my French, but I'm also using my French to learn something new. I've never had any sort of public speaking coaching, and I kind of feel like since graduating school, I just haven't done any type of public speaking in general. And so now I'm getting to improve both my language skills and my confidence when it comes to speaking French, but I'm also just improving my public speaking skills in general. I've already learned so many different things and really made note of what certain people do that makes them so persuasive. But I really cannot stress how variable lesson structure is for me. Currently, I think all of my languages have a completely different structure that I use for the lessons that I take, and those lesson structures evolve over time. I used to have very structured Bulgarian lessons, and now we just have very casual, in-the-moment conversations. And that's because as my goals change and my levels in languages change, so do the structures that I want to use to learn them. And I think one of the most magical things about italki is that it's not like taking a class in school where it's the same thing all the time. You can always be adapting your classes to meet your approach to self-study, and you're never locked into any one specific way of learning. That said, I do have 3 non-negotiable things when it comes to my lessons. Number 1, lessons need to be monolingual or as monolingual as possible. As soon as I'm at like a low A2 level, I want to be learning new words, asking questions, and getting feedback entirely in my target language. Even if we are using like a textbook or a PowerPoint presentation or some resource like that, I want to be discussing that resource in the language. Number 2, very similar to number 1, but not exactly the same, I want to be using the language the whole time. Structured lessons for me do not mean listening to someone lecture about a specific grammar point in English. They mean me doing textbook exercises on a new verb conjugation and then asking questions about why I got certain things wrong in the target language. They mean me reading a news article aloud and getting feedback on my pronunciation and then summarizing the article in the target language to the tutor. I can read textbooks on my own time. My lessons are a time for me to actually get to use the language with a real person and get to practice all of the things that I've been working on while also learning new things. And lastly, number 3, a very simple one. No matter what type of lesson I'm taking, I always make sure that my tutor is sending new words and corrections in the chat. That way I can work on learning that new vocabulary and also just make note of the patterns of mistakes that I'm making and try to make a little bit more progress with those next time. And speaking of doing a little bit better next time, one thing that I always do after a lesson ends is take a second to focus on what I did well and what I can do better next time. Lessons can be a really great benchmark of your progress, so even if it's something small, like knowing that I remembered to use a subjunctive when I needed to, or noticing that I always used the wrong preposition with a certain verb, can be really great to show me that I am making progress and also give me a little bit of help in knowing what I should work on before my next class. And then the other things I do between lessons don't necessarily get done immediately after the lesson, but I do things like making Anki cards for any new vocabulary that I learned, writing down any grammar points that I made mistakes with or learned about in the class so I can use them correctly in the future, and of course doing my homework if my tutor has assigned any. Once I've found a tutor that I really like and we've found a lesson structure that works really well for us, I really try to get us into a really consistent routine. This This is also very, very dependent on my goals for the languages and also just my schedule at the time. But I feel like having a routine like taking a Spanish lesson every Wednesday at 7 or taking a Bulgarian lesson every Friday morning really just helps me stay accountable and also make sure that I am on track to meet my language goals. And then in addition to having like a set day and time for each language, I also really like to book my lessons out for the month. I feel like it just makes it a lot easier to guarantee that I'll be able to get on my tutor's schedule, and it just helps me plan my life accordingly. I know, like many things in this video, this probably sounds like a very, very small thing, but this practice that I started during university of treating my language lessons like actual classes with set dates and times and reoccurring schedules has really been so vital for my consistency and also just my ability to continue learning languages even when life gets really, really hectic. And that is how I use italki. If you feel like there's anything that I somehow managed to miss in this video and you have any questions about italki, feel free to leave them down below. I'm happy to answer them. And if you use italki to learn languages and you have a different approach from mine, I would love to hear all about it in the comments. Like I said, I'm nosy. I want to know how everyone's learning languages all the time. So please tell me all about what you look for in a tutor and the kind of lessons that you like to take. Huge shout out to my tutor Philippe for letting me film some of our lessons for this video, and to italki for sponsoring this video. If you want $5 of italki credits for free with your first purchase of $10, make sure you use the code PROGRESS5. It'll also be down in the description. I'm gonna go do my homework for my next italki lesson. I'll see you in the next one, and remember, practice makes progress. I'm realizing now that my hair color is like the exact same color as the italki logo, so you know what they say, those who match together learn languages together. I don't know.